Welcome to your deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at mindfulness in the workplace. You've given us a really interesting mix here. Harvard Business Review articles, like actual scientific studies, even some personal notes. It seems like you really want to understand how mindfulness can be more than just a buzzword, and actually make a difference in a fast-paced work environment.
Yeah. The sources you gave really suggest that you want to see how mindfulness can have a real impact on things like leadership, decision-making, even creativity. It's about bringing it off the meditation cushion and into everyday life.
Okay, yeah, I love that. So I guess first things first, like what even IS mindfulness, one of the sources you shared, the HBR interview with Ellen Langer, really stuck with me. She talks about mindfulness as like actively noticing new things, being present, sensitive to context, and constantly adapting.
Yeah, and what's interesting is she contrasts mindfulness with mindlessness. You know those times when you're at work, just going through the motion, totally on autopilot.
Yeah.
That's mindlessness. We've all been there. Mindfulness is the opposite. It's about bringing like a fresh perspective to every moment, each task, each interaction.
So how does this fresh perspective actually like play out in the workplace? Because I'm seeing some of your notes here about wanting to weave mindfulness into like your actual workday.
Well, one of the most fascinating things about mindfulness is that it literally changes your brain. There's this article you gave us. Mindfulness can literally change your brain. It highlights how mindfulness can actually increase gray matter in areas related to self-regulation and resilience.
Wait, hold on. It like physically changes your brain. Tell me more about that.
That's true. One of the areas that gets impacted is the hippocampus. Basically, it's your brain's stress buffer, and mindfulness strengthens it. Think of it this way. You're building up your mental resilience so you're better equipped to handle those, inevitable stressful situations that pop up at work.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by that stressful project or like that last minute deadline, mindfulness can actually help me stay like calm and focused.
Exactly. It's not that stressful things won't happen, but you'll have more capacity to navigate them without getting totally derailed.
That's actually really helpful because let's be honest, who doesn't get stressed at work? So besides beefing up my hippocampus, are there other practical ways that I can actually bring mindfulness into my day?
Absolutely. You shared this great article, How to Practice Mindfulness Throughout Your Workday, and it's got a ton of useful tips. Think micro-meditations, being totally present in meetings, even using your commute for a mental reset.
Okay, I like the sound of those micro meditations because realistically, I can't just, drop everything and meditate for an hour in the middle of the workday.
Right, and you don't have to. Even just setting an hourly timer on your phone for like a 1-minute mindfulness break can make a huge difference. Just pause, take a few deep breaths, bring your attention to the present moment, and it can help you avoid things like decision fatigue and approach your work with renewed focus.
That's a great tip. I'm definitely trying that. So we've talked about what mindfulness is, how it affects our brains, but I'm also seeing here in your notes some stuff about mindfulness and leadership. Is there a connection?
Absolutely. The article Emotional Agility explores this connection, and it emphasizes how especially leaders can use mindfulness to manage their inner world more effectively.
So it's not just about being less stressed, it's about being a better leader.
Think of it this way. Mindfulness gives you that space to respond to situations thoughtfully, rather than just reacting impulsively. It's about being aware of your emotions and choosing how you want to act, even in those really challenging situations.
Okay, that makes sense. It's like that classic advice, take a deep breath before you respond, but like backed by neuroscience and a whole practice.
Right. And this brings us to a really interesting and kind of unsettling concept, the power paradox.
Ooh, okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this power paradox.
Well, Dr. Keltner's article, Don't Let Power Corrupt You, makes this point that power can actually erode empathy and lead to sometimes some pretty bad behavior.
Wait, so the more power someone has, the less empathetic they become? But wouldn't you think it would be like the opposite?
You would think so, right?
Yeah.
But Keltner points to research showing that leaders are actually 3 times more likely to interrupt others and act rudely. It seems that power can go to our heads and make us less attuned to the people around us.
Wow, that's a bit sobering. But I'm guessing there's a way to counter this power paradox, right?
Yes. Thankfully, Keltner offers a few antidotes.
Okay, let's hear them. Because I definitely don't want to become that power-hungry boss who everyone avoids.
Well, he talks about the importance of cultivating empathy, expressing gratitude, and being generous.
Those all seem like pretty straightforward qualities, but how do they actually play out in a leadership role?
Think about it this way. Empathy means truly trying to understand the perspectives of your team members, even if you don't agree with them. Gratitude means acknowledging and appreciating their contributions, both big and small. And generosity means being willing to share credit, empower others, and support their growth.
So it's about shifting from a me focus to a we focus.
Exactly. And that's something that, like, mindful leaders just naturally do.
Can you give me an example of a leader who embodies these qualities? Because I think having like a real world example would help me like understand this better.
Absolutely. Think of someone like Pixar's Pete Docter. He's known for generously sharing credit with his team and creating a collaborative, supportive work environment. He embodies mindful leadership, recognizing that success is a team effort.
That's a great example. And it makes me think that mindfulness isn't just about like personal growth. It's about creating a better work culture for everyone.
You're absolutely right. And that brings us to another interesting question you raised in your notes: the relationship between mindfulness and productivity. Because on the surface, it seems like mindfulness should naturally lead to, like, greater productivity.
Right. Like less stress, more focus, better decisions. It all sounds like a recipe for getting more done.
It does, but one of the articles you shared is something lost when we use mindfulness as a productivity tool. Raises a really important point. Are we oversimplifying mindfulness by just focusing on its productivity benefits? Is there something deeper we're missing?
That's a really thought-provoking question, because I can see how it would be easy to get caught up in like the idea of mindfulness as just a hack for getting more done.
Exactly. And while mindfulness can certainly boost our effectiveness at work, it's important to remember the deeper purpose, you know? It's about living a more fulfilling life, both at work and outside of it.
So it's not just about checking things off my to-do list faster. It's about finding more meaning and purpose in my work.
That's a great way to put it, and I think that's a really important takeaway for you as you explore mindfulness further.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I think it's important to also talk about like potential downsides to mindfulness, right? Because I'm seeing some notes here about the risks involved.
You're absolutely right. Mindfulness is a powerful tool, but like any tool, it can be misused.
The article, "There Are Risks to Mindfulness at Work," highlights some potential pitfalls, like using mindfulness to avoid difficult decisions or forcing it on others.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that mindfulness should empower us, not become a way to escape responsibility or control other people.
So how do I like walk that line? How do I know if I'm using mindfulness in a healthy way?
Well, that's something we can delve into deeper in the next part of our deep dive.
Right.
We'll explore the nuances of mindfulness and what it means for you specifically.
Okay, great. I'm ready to keep diving.
Excellent. We'll be back soon with even more insights on how mindfulness can transform your work life.
Welcome back to your mindfulness deep dive. We just finished like unpacking the science behind mindfulness and how it can impact our leadership. But we also ended on kind of a cliffhanger talking about the potential downsides of mindfulness.
Right, because like we were saying, mindfulness is powerful, but it needs to be used thoughtfully, ethically.
Exactly. So let's dive deeper into those risks. One of the things that stuck with me from "There Are Risks to Mindfulness at Work" was this idea that mindfulness could actually be used to avoid tough decisions.
It's tempting, isn't it, to just retreat into this calm, mindful space when things get difficult.
Oh yeah, totally. Especially if I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed.
But sometimes the answer even to disconnect. Sometimes it's to lean in and engage with that problem, even if it's uncomfortable.
So mindfulness isn't like a free pass to avoid conflict or shirk responsibility.
Exactly. It's about approaching those challenges with more clarity and composure, not using it as an escape hatch.
The article also mentions the risk of groupthink when mindfulness is like imposed on others.
Yes, and I think this goes back to what we were talking about earlier, about respecting individual choice. You know, mandating mindfulness practices can actually backfire, create resentment, resistance.
That makes sense. It kind of defeats the whole purpose of mindfulness, which is about personal growth and self-awareness, right?
Absolutely. It's like telling someone they have to relax. It just doesn't work that way.
So if I'm in a leadership position, how do I encourage mindfulness without being overbearing?
Lead by example. Share your own experiences with mindfulness and how it's benefited you. Create a supportive environment where people feel safe exploring it, you know, if they choose to.
Okay. So shifting gears a bit, I'm seeing in your notes that you're also interested in the practical applications of mindfulness in the workplace. Beyond leadership, are there other areas where it can be beneficial?
Absolutely. One area where mindfulness can have a huge impact is in our communication skills.
Yeah, I can see how, like, being present and attentive would naturally make you a better communicator.
Exactly. Mindfulness helps us become better listeners. We're more attuned to what other people are saying, the nuances. less likely to interrupt or jump to conclusions.
It's about truly hearing what someone is saying, not just waiting for your turn to speak.
Yeah, that's a key distinction. Mindful listening involves suspending judgment, paying attention to both the verbal and nonverbal cues, and really trying to understand the speaker's perspective.
I'm thinking about all those meetings where it's so easy to get distracted or start, like, planning your response in your head.
Right. Mindfulness helps you stay present in those situations. Even when your mind wants to wander, you can gently guide your attention back to the conversation.
And avoid those awkward moments when you realize you've totally zoned out and missed something important.
Exactly. It's about being fully engaged, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally.
Now, you also mentioned in your notes that you're interested in using mindfulness to, like, boost creativity. Is there a connection there?
There is. It's fascinating. There's growing evidence that mindfulness can actually help unlock creative potential.
One of the articles you shared, Mindfulness in the Age of Complexity, touches on this, right?
It does. Ellen Langer argues that mindfulness helps us see things with fresh eyes. Break free from those, rigid thinking patterns that can stifle innovation.
Yeah, she describes this study where participants were asked to come up with new uses for products that had, failed. And the ones who were primed for mindfulness generated far more creative ideas.
Yeah, it's a great example of how mindfulness can help us approach problems from a different angle, see possibilities where others might see limitations.
It's almost like shifting from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, where you embrace challenges as opportunities for learning and innovation.
That's a great analogy. Mindfulness encourages us to experiment, be open to new ideas, and view setbacks not as failures, but as stepping stones.
This makes me think about, the classic example of the Post-it note, which was born from, a failed adhesive formula.
Exactly. If those scientists had been stuck in a mindless rut, they might have just discarded that failed glue.
But their mindfulness, or maybe just their openness to new possibilities, allowed them to see its potential in a totally different context.
And it led to a groundbreaking innovation.
Okay, so we've talked about mindfulness for stress reduction, leadership, communication, even creativity. What about, the emotional benefits of mindfulness? That seems like a big piece of the puzzle.
Absolutely. And this is where it gets really personal. Mindfulness can have a profound impact on our overall well-being.
We already touched on its ability to reduce stress and boost resilience. But what else is there?
Well, mindfulness can help us cultivate a sense of calm, contentment, and even joy in our daily lives.
It's about shifting our focus from what's wrong to what's right, appreciating the present moment instead of dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
Yeah, it's about breaking free from that constant barrage of, negative thoughts and emotions that can drain our energy and happiness.
But it's not about denying or suppressing those negative experiences, right?
No, not at all. It's about acknowledging them, observing them without judgment, and allowing them to pass.
This reminds me of the concept of emotional agility that we discussed earlier.
Exactly. Mindfulness is like a key component of emotional agility. It gives us the tools to navigate our inner world with more skill and awareness.
It's about becoming the master of our emotions, not a slave to them.
That's the ultimate goal.
As we're talking about this, it's becoming increasingly clear that mindfulness isn't just a set of techniques or practices.
Right. It's more than just meditation or deep breathing exercises.
It's a way of being.
That's a great way to put it. It's about cultivating a mindful attitude toward life, both at work and beyond.
It's about bringing that awareness, that presence to everything we do, from the mundane to the extraordinary.
And that's where the real transformation happens.
This makes me think of one of the articles you shared, Mindfulness for People Who Are Too Busy to Meditate.
Oh, that's a great resource for finding ways to integrate mindfulness into a busy schedule.
Yeah, it emphasizes that mindfulness doesn't have to be this separate, formal activity.
Right. It can be woven into the fabric of our daily lives through those micro-meditations we talked about, mindful breathing, and simply paying attention to the present moment.
The article even suggests practicing mindfulness during everyday activities like driving, eating, or showering.
It's about transforming those mundane tasks into opportunities to cultivate presence and awareness.
It's about savoring each moment rather than just rushing through life on autopilot.
That's the essence of mindfulness.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We've explored what mindfulness is, how it impacts our brains and behavior, how it relates to leadership, and the potential benefits and risks.
But now let's bring it back to you, the listener.
How can you apply these insights to your own life?
That's what we'll focus on in the final part of our deep dive. We'll explore specific strategies for cultivating mindfulness, integrating it into your work, and leadership style.
We'll equip you with the tools to transform your work life and beyond.
Welcome back to the final part of your mindfulness deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from the science of mindfulness to its impact on leadership and well-being.
And now it's time to get practical. Let's talk about how you can actually cultivate mindfulness in your own life and work.
That's what I'm excited to dig into, because I think we've all had that aha moment where we're like, okay, I get it, I get mindfulness, but now what?
Right. It's about bridging that gap between, knowledge and action.
Exactly. So based on the sources you provided, it seems like you're looking for practical strategies to integrate mindfulness into your daily routine and your leadership style. Would you say that's accurate?
Absolutely. And the good news is there are tons of simple but effective ways to do that.
Okay, great. So where do we begin?
Well, the article, How to Practice Mindfulness Throughout Your Workday, suggests starting small. Don't feel like you have to jump into these long meditation sessions right away.
That's reassuring, because I think a lot of people get intimidated by the idea of meditation.
Right, but mindfulness doesn't have to be this big formal thing. It can be as simple as incorporating short bursts of mindfulness throughout your day.
Like those micro meditations we talked about.
Exactly. Even just a minute or two of focused breathing can make a difference.
I love that idea of setting an hourly timer on my phone as a reminder to pause and reconnect with the present moment.
Yeah, it's a great way to build mindfulness into your routine. You can also use specific cues in your workday as triggers for mindfulness.
Like taking a few deep breaths before a meeting or after responding to a challenging email.
Exactly. It's about finding those little pockets of time to bring your attention back to the present.
Now, what about those times when you do want to engage in a more extended mindfulness practice? Like if I actually wanted to meditate for 15 or 20 minutes, how do I make time for that with a busy schedule?
That's a great question. And the article, Mindfulness for People Who Are Too Busy to Meditate, offers some good tips. Even if you can't carve out a dedicated 30 minutes, you can still find opportunities for mindfulness.
Okay, tell me more about that.
The article suggests bringing mindfulness to everyday activities, like walking, showering, even washing the dishes.
I never thought of washing dishes as a mindfulness practice.
Right. But it can be. Instead of letting your mind race with to-do lists or worries, just focus on the sensations. The warm water, the soapy bubbles, the feel of the dishes.
It's about turning those mundane tasks into opportunities to cultivate that presence and awareness.
Exactly. And the more you practice this, the more you find that mindfulness just becomes a natural part of your day.
So we've talked about formal meditation, informal mindfulness practices. What about mindful listening? We touched on this earlier, but I think it's worth revisiting.
Absolutely. Mindful listening is a skill that can transform your relationships, both personal and professional.
It's about truly paying attention to what other people are saying, without judgment or interruption.
It's about being present with them, fully engaged in the conversation, and trying to understand their perspective.
Yeah, I know I'm definitely guilty of planning my response in my head while someone else is talking.
We all do it. But mindful listening is about letting go of that inner dialogue and really tuning in to what the other person is communicating.
It sounds simple, but I imagine it takes practice to become a truly mindful listener.
It does. But the more you practice, the more natural it will become.
And now let's talk about mindfulness in the context of leadership. You've highlighted the importance of cultivating empathy as a leader. Can you elaborate on that?
Empathy is essential for building strong connections and fostering a positive work environment.
But how do you actually practice empathy as a leader?
Dr. Keltner, in his article, Don't Let Power Corrupt You, suggests some pretty simple but powerful ways to cultivate empathy.
I'm all ears.
He talks about things like asking thoughtful questions, listening attentively, and acknowledging other people's perspectives.
Those seem like pretty basic things, but I guess we don't always do them as well as we could.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in our own agendas and priorities.
So empathy is about taking a step back and really trying to see things from other people's point of view.
Exactly. And it's something that mindful leaders do naturally.
Now, along with empathy, you've also mentioned gratitude and generosity as key ingredients in mindful leadership.
Absolutely. Gratitude is about acknowledging and appreciating the contributions of others.
Whether it's a simple thank you or a more formal recognition, gratitude can go a long way.
Yeah. It can boost morale, strengthen relationships, create a more positive work environment.
And what about generosity? How does that play out in a leadership role?
Generosity, in the context of leadership, is about empowering others, sharing credit, and supporting their growth.
It's about creating a culture of collaboration and, mutual support.
Exactly. And it's another hallmark of mindful leadership.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the science of mindfulness to practical strategies for cultivating it in our own lives.
And we've explored how mindfulness can transform our leadership, our communication, our overall well-being.
But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought.
I'm listening.
Mindfulness is not a destination, it's a journey.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It's an ongoing practice of cultivating awareness, presence, and compassion.
And it's a practice that can enrich our lives in countless ways.
There will be times when you fall short, when your mind wanders, when you react impulsively.
That's normal. It's all part of the process.
The key is to notice those moments without judgment and gently guide your attention back to the present.
Mindfulness is not about perfection.
It's about progress.
And every step you take in the direction of mindfulness is a step worth celebrating.
So as you embark on your own mindfulness journey, just remember to be patient with yourself. Celebrate your successes, learn from your challenges.
And keep in mind that even small steps in the direction of mindfulness can have a ripple effect.
Transforming not just your work life,
but your entire life.
Until next time, keep diving.